All right, hey everybody, Miss Lynch here, and this is the first part of Chapter 24's lecture, okay? Alrighty, so hopefully you have all your stuff ready to go, and I'm also ready to go. So here we go. All right, like I said, Chapter 24, An Affluent Society, 1953 to 1960. So that's where we're at, okay. Alrighty, let me see. So, our first section, the Golden Age. Alrighty, so we are coming out of, we're a few years out of World War II. We're at 1950, or we're 1953, pardon me. So, end of the Korean War, which was really considered to be a continuation of World War II. So that ends, things are calming down. That's where we're at, okay? Okay, so after the war, the U.S. economy enjoyed a remarkable growth. So as things calmed down militaristically across the globe, there's a shift towards what is being manufactured, okay? But so the unemployment rate goes down, prices in regards to different industries stabilizes, and this increases the standard of living, okay? So with that standard of living, which we will talk about that in some detail over our next slides, in regards to all the patterns that will come out of this, okay? But there are numerous innovations that come into widespread use during this time, most of them in regards to household technologies and commodities, okay? So television, okay, remember most homes had radios prior to this, so this shifts to everyone getting televisions, dishwashers, air conditioning, going along with dishwashers, all sorts of kitchen-related gadgets, so electric mixers, ice cream making machines, all of these things that were intended to, well, save time but increase capacity of what can be manufactured at home, okay? But so televisions, air conditioning, dishwashers, long-distance telephone calls become a bit more accessible. They're still expensive. It says inexpensive. They're still pretty expensive to the average citizen when it comes down to it. And also this is the jet age, okay? We will get into the space race during this time, but so jet travel is the precursor to that, okay? But this increases, air travel, okay? So this will become an industry during the 50s. Okay, and as unemployment rate lowered, the average wage rose for workers, okay? Okay, so a changing economy. Like I said, we are no longer in wartime, so peacetime manufacturing can become our focus. Okay, aviation. So like I said, we're in the jet age. Especially in the Midwest, we have all this open air. So Kansas, Oklahoma, aviation will become a large industry for us in our area, all right? And especially, and then New Mexico too, as we get into the nuclear age and all of that stuff. Okay, 1950s, the American economy began shifting away from manufacturing, putting countries often that we had been in conflict with at this time. We're talking about Japan, okay? So we had been in conflict with them, and we began shifting our manufacturing over to, economies like the Japanese, mostly with small plastic goods to start, and then it increases to larger goods and larger technologies, which I said, well, we'll get to a point where they will have a technological boom. So this will kind of fuel all of that. But so our manufacturing jobs start going overseas, and the American economy begins to focus more on things like the service industry, which restaurants, that's kind of what we're still mostly focused on, okay? But service industry, education, information, finance, and entertainment. Those are all fairly well intact today. Okay. Let's see. Okay, the South was transformed as the number of farms declined since the 1950s. That has been ongoing even today. But farm production increased. So this will be the shift to our big farms in California, which is something we've been talking about going up to this point. Okay. So yeah, like I said, California and then Arizona and Texas also. They've got the room to spare. Okay, so this is our shift away from southern cotton to less labor-intensive crops. Again, thinking of where we're talking about in the West. So fruit, soybeans, and then poultry will also become a large industry. Okay, a suburban nation. So this is what I was saying. We will look at our growth patterns to see shifts during this time, but this is the, okay, yeah, I'll get to that here in a minute. But anyway, so this is the growth of the suburbs, and during this time, it's able to happen because of the interstate highway system being developed, okay? So if you guys have your books with you, I actually remembered mine today. Good for me, right? Okay, so if you have the 6th edition, I'm looking at 738, but this map is just the interstate highway system, so you can see how this was, the first stages of that, okay? So yeah, residential construction, highway construction is part of that. Our focus shifts to consumer goods. Okay, and then the dream of home ownership came into reach for many Americans. This is largely in part due to things like the GI Bill, okay, all of these veterans coming out of the wars, World War II and the Korean War. So home ownership becomes kind of a feasible goal for this generation. Okay, our interstate highway system is being constructed, and this leads to a shift of population from the cities to the suburbs. I will talk about white flight here in a minute because that is a large contributing factor. Caucasian American populations in many cities will be part of this suburban push, and that will become kind of the defining term of the suburban nation and suburban growth. Okay, so I will get to that in a minute, but so we're looking at just the earliest stages of that. But so shift of population from the cities to the suburbs. Automobile, highway system make that a reality. Highway system will also transform travel habits, particularly in regards to the family vacation. Okay, so road trips will become a thing. Okay, so yeah, commuting and long distance vacations become a thing for families during this time and our workers. Okay, motels, drive-ins, roadside eating establishments. This all comes about because of the automobile industry and our highway system, okay? All right, and then again, looking west, so this will, again, focus on California, but the modern West emerged in the post-war years, with California being that ideal depiction of the American dream, okay? The post-war suburban boom, California will come to represent that. If you ever watch The Wonder Years, that represents this whole time, especially in California. Anyway, but so that is a good depiction. If that, I haven't watched in a long time, but that is always what I think of whenever I think of the suburbs. Okay, so our western cities were decentralized clusters of single-family homes and businesses that were united by a web of highways that were dependent on vehicles, okay? Alrighty, also, like I'd said, television enters the American home in a large scale. Alrighty, so television transformed American lives in a number of ways. It replaced newspapers as the most common way that people got their information, okay? Changed eating habits, and things like frozen dinners went on the market in 1954, so that is a contributing factor. Yes, changed eating habits that we are still seeing the repercussions from that today, okay? Fast food, frozen dinners, all that stuff. Okay, so TV avoided controversy and projected a bland image of middle-class life. This is true, and is also problematic whenever people, now whenever we look back and whenever we see these bland images of middle-class life, and we assume that that was the actual norm across the board, and that's not true. People were as diverse then as they are now. So this reality of television is super, super limited, and the most popular shows to begin with are things like quiz shows, westerns, okay, which are very skewed and inaccurate, as we know, and comedies, which again will focus on this middle class Caucasian American lifestyle. But yeah, so television early on is, because there were 3 channels to begin with, so there's not a lot of room. There are only a certain amount of programs that you could have at a time, but so very limited to begin with, okay? Also during this time, advertisements for consumer goods, all of that, those household technologies and kitchen stuff that I was talking about, advertising really develops as its own enterprise during this time. This is where the Mad Men depiction comes about, okay? And again, depicting that middle class image, for a lot of advertisers, the maternal figure in a home would be the one doing the shopping for all of these goods, so that is the person who ends up being targeted for all of these ads. That's who's depicted. But yeah, so advertising really begins to specifically target women during this time, all right? Okay, so by the end of the 1950s, 9 out of 10 homes had televisions, so 90% of the population. And this became the American common cultural experience, okay? Watching television and eating frozen dinners, okay? But so, that is our television world. Alrighty. Like I said, advertisers really focus on the mother of the home during this time, and the emergence of suburbia placed pressure on the family, especially women in particular. And as the suburbs grow and our breadwinners, who are often the father figure of the household, will be gone for more hours in the day as they have to get on the highway and go into the city and work, and then they come home. And so there's more pressure to maintain the home and cooking, cleaning, child rearing, all of those things. So this shift to suburban lifestyle affects women across the nation, okay? Yeah, all right. This is especially hard on women that worked during the war and kind of had that experience of being able to go out and earn an income and be a part of the workforce, and then in the 50s, they're all sent out to the suburbs. So anyway, we will see, actually at the end of this slide, I guess I will talk to how that affected women collectively, okay? But anyway, so by the mid-1950s, women begin working again. So that lull is fought against pretty quickly, okay? Okay, women begin working again, but the nature and aims of their work changed. Okay, so we're not in a wartime economy, okay? We don't need these large-scale industrial productions to happen, all right? So women's work from this point on was considered to be supplemental income, and well, depending on the family that you're looking at, but supplemental income, and a lot of times it was not considered to be a necessity. Okay. So by and large, women were expected to still get married, have children, stay at home, maintain the home with all of these new gadgets that were supposed to make their lives easier, right? Okay, and this is when we have the baby boom, all right? So all of the boomers, my parents included, will come out of this generation. And this ideal of marriage, children, home ownership, again, this is being portrayed by our advertisers who are targeting women at home, saying you need these goods to get this ideal living situation, okay? So this is all reflected in advertisements and television of the time. Women also, of this generation, the marrying age is younger than before. Okay, so the average marrying age for men is 22, for women it's 20. They also divorce less, and they had more children. Okay, so our average family is having 3 children during this time. Immigration is significantly lower during this time, but the population still grew by 30 million people during the 1950s. So that is telling of the amount of babies that are being born, okay? Okay, how am I doing on time? All right. Alrighty, so let's talk about the issue of white flight. Okay, so a segregated landscape is what I'm looking at. So I am over on 741. Okay, a move to the suburbs was a way to fulfill the American post-war dream. Okay, remember home ownership. This was believed it would immediately launch you into a middle-class lifestyle. Okay, but the suburbs remained segregated communities. Okay, this is still the 1950s. Do I have that written down here? But yeah, so there were legal stipulations in the paperwork that goes with home ownership at pretty much every level that reinforced that these communities would remain segregated, okay? So during the post-war suburban boom, federal agencies continued to ensure mortgages that barred the resale of homes to people of color, okay? So that is what I'm talking about. And then that, thereby financing housing segregation, okay? So this was being reinforced at the federal level, all right? Okay, so there are programs referred to as urban renewal, in which cities demolished poor neighborhoods in order to make room for retail centers, housing complexes that were geared at all Caucasian middle class families, and highway construction, okay? So Broadway Extension in Oklahoma City, that was part of this, okay? It went through Deep Deuce, all right? So it literally cut that neighborhood in half, okay? So urban renewal programs like this, this is what I'm talking about. Also, what was I going to say? Yeah, the selling or the legal provisions that barred the resale of houses to people of color. There are examples that can be found in our, in Oklahoma City, even going up into the 1970s. So I know somebody that their mom passed away, and whenever they went to get the original deed of the house, that was in the paperwork. So anyway, just to show you guys how this was happening on a local level, okay? Okay. All right, the divided society. Okay, so suburbanization hardened racial lines as 7 million Caucasians left the cities for the suburbs. So that is white flight, whenever you hear that, okay? 7 million people in the 1950s. Okay, 3 million African Americans migrated north. Anyway, sorry, I was thinking, is that still considered part of the Great Migration? But it's a generation down the line, so I'm going to say no. Okay, let's see. 500,000 Puerto Ricans moved to northern cities after farms in Puerto Rico were taken over by large American sugar companies. Okay, and the process of racial exclusion became self-reinforcing. So looking at that last slide, with like I said, with provisions being put in place, they often come across as things like zoning measures and all of that. But so anyway, this kind of unofficial segregation is very reinforced within itself during this time, okay? Okay. Well, I think I might speed it up through this section just a little bit because we are still very much in the Cold War. We are not getting out of it for, some decades. So I think I can kind of speed through a little bit of it just because, we're not done talking about it. Anyway, so we're still in the Cold War during this point in time, and there's still a lot of anti-communist rhetoric and fear going around in the United States. From both parties, okay, I should say. Okay. Yes, so, all right. During this time, American values celebrated religion as opposed to the godlessness of communism. And so this is whenever we have our terminology of In God We Trust comes into our national dialect in 1957, and then the Pledge of Allegiance comes about, is adopted popularly, or widely, I should say. But anyway, so these things came out of kind of some anti-communist just of the time. Okay, this is also still mid-1950s. Remember, we talked about McCarthy, Senator McCarthy, and all of that coming to a head in 1954. Anyway, okay, so. Yes, so I have said this before, the opposite of communism is capitalism. So in order to be good Americans and to fight against communism, that reinforced, the buying of all of these consumer goods, all of that household technology that I'm talking about, okay? So it's our freedom as Americans to be able to go out and buy these goods and support capitalism, support our system, okay? But so this is, free enterprise, okay? Okay. The Eisenhower era. Okay, so the 1952 campaign, again, television is becoming more widespread, right? And politics will just be part of that, okay? That makes sense. So Eisenhower is popular in 1952. He promised to end the Korean conflict, which I will get into in... sorry, we're finishing that up. I guess I'm going to get into the beginning of the Vietnam War. Okay, anyway, sorry, ignore what I just said. But so, Eisenhower promised to end the Korean conflict, which at that point was, 2 years in. It would end in 1953, so, he's successful in that. And during the 1950s, voters at home and abroad seemed to find reassurance in selecting familiar leaders to govern them. So our patriarchal figures, okay? Paternalistic, I should say, okay? Da, da, da. Modern republicanism. Again, this is very much shaped by the Cold War and that fear. Again, this is not just fear of the Russians. The Russians are also afraid of Americans. So just overall fear. Everyone's just so afraid during this time. But it very much shapes political policy, okay? Da, da, da. Okay, so yeah, looking at the bottom of this slide, our interstate highway system would build 41,000 miles during this time. And yeah, the national defense system would also expand greatly, all right? But so, the National Defense Education Act was a response to the first artificial satellite launched by the Soviets in 1957, which is Sputnik. And that, 1957, will lead us into the space race, okay? Which will be a whole other arena of military fortitude, okay? So we don't have to worry about our borders. Now we're taking it out into the galaxy. Okay, I do believe that is that where I'm gonna stop? I think that's where I'm gonna stop. Okay, I will stop it for there or stop it for now, and I will pick up. Yeah, I will pick up beginning with massive retaliation. Okay. So if you guys have any questions about anything, let me know. And otherwise, I will see you for the second part of this chapter. Okay, bye.